che Khenpo Sodargye Udāna Bakar Targam Santo Shirmer Do Tombatic Jechan Lanki Shansa. Nichen River Zerni Jankamsa, Jawartik Shanla, Jimmy Pansoja Lasorand, Gorgit Tobampo, Shinji Lo.
The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in hundreds of thousands of eons. Now that I have seen, heard and can uphold it, may I understand the Tathagata's true meaning to liberate all sentient beings. Please generate the supreme bodhicitta. Next, we will teach about the Buddha of great compassion, who personally expounded the Udāna Sūtra. The Udāna Sūtra is divided into 4 volumes and 33 chapters. We have now completed chapters 1 through 7 from the first volume. Today we begin chapter 8, the chapter on speech.
Kantakshi Jan Mashi Zervatan Zender Mala Nervan Rover and Yer Mateanikan Java Parurtus.
Those who claim what was done was not done, liars fall into hell. Both types of people are equal, possessing inferior dharmas in the next life. This chapter mainly teaches, we just finished the chapter on good conduct. After the chapter on good conduct was completed, why do we teach the chapter on speech, as everyone knows from before? From the chapter on impermanence to the chapter on discipline. The chapter on discipline mainly teaches practicing virtue and abandoning evil. Practicing virtue has many classifications within the precepts, among these abandoning evil and practicing virtuous dharmas. The chapter on good conduct also taught some of these principles of practicing virtue after abandoning evil. In this chapter on speech, it mainly teaches abandoning evil. When it comes to abandoning evil, among all negative karmas, the negative karma created through speech is very serious, including creating schisms in the Sangha through speech and various negative karmas such as slander. So here we mainly teach the chapter on speech. This chapter on speech is somewhat different from chapters on speech in other sutras and treatises. It mainly focuses on negative karma created through speech. It emphasizes this aspect, especially negative karma created in relation to the Sangha and noble beings. The negative karma created in this regard is extremely serious. It mainly teaches from this perspective. First, claiming what was done was not done. Here it refers to various different types of slander. The story behind this verse about slander, when the Buddha was in Shravast, there was a beautiful woman named Chinka. Through the instigation and orders of heretics, she pretended to be pregnant, tying a large wooden basin to her belly. Then, while the Buddha was teaching the Dharma, she said in front of all the assembled crowd, "You previously used very sweet and beautiful words to seduce and deceive me. Now I am already pregnant." That's what she said at the time. "Yet you're still here teaching the Dharma," and so on. This woman spoke like this among the great assembly. The Buddha at that time didn't pay much attention to her. He continued teaching and also said that slanderers fall into hell. Then this woman said repeatedly, "When you were with me before, you didn't mention falling into hell. Now you're talking about falling into hell," and so on. She continued her slander like this. At this time, Shakra couldn't bear it anymore. He manifested as a small mouse and entered her body, biting through the rope that held the wooden basin. Then, in front of the Sangha, suddenly nowadays many film actors as well. Previously, when we were at Ziking Mountain Valley holding entertainment Dharma gatherings, there were also many people who tied wooden basins to their bellies. For performances at that time, the wooden basin tied to her belly fell down. After it fell down, all doubts of the Sangha were eliminated. Later, this woman fell alive into Avicii hell. This is such a story. The Buddha spoke this verse in response to this incident. Actually, the Buddha is a great enlightened being with perfect qualities and realization, yet he too was subjected to such groundless slander from others, and this slander occurred in a public setting which was quite serious. This story appears in the biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, White Lotus, an extensive biography of the lives of Buddha Shakyamuni as well. When His Holiness taught this, he also elaborated extensively on many other aspects. The literal meaning says, claiming what was done was not done, and claiming what was not done was done. Speaking such lies leads to hell. Indeed, claiming what was done was not done. Slanderers use various methods. For instance, regarding virtuous conduct, whatever was done, they completely claim was not done. And regarding what was not done, including the slanderous behavior toward the Buddha, just mentioned, she used lies to claim it was already done. In this case, her karmic result is falling into the reviving hell, black rope hell, etc., all the way to Avaitsi, hell, experiencing suffering. These two people, there were two types of people just mentioned, the two types who slander about done and undone equally, their evil deeds and sins are equivalent. In this life, they also experience various karmic results. In future lives, what will they possess? They will possess extremely inferior results because in past lives they slandered noble beings and the true Dharma. For this reason, they experience unbearable, particularly frightening results. In future lives, they possess very inferior dharmas. What kind of inferior dharmas? Generally, they are hard to imagine. Some people we see now also appear very pitiable. Worldly people say, pitiable people have detestable qualities. They may have created very serious karma in past lives. Previously, it seems in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, there was a child born whose entire body was just a lump of flesh. Besides this, including limbs, he had nothing else. Later the Buddha said that in a past life he was apparently an official. He accepted bribes, and after accepting bribes did not speak truthfully, then deliberately spoke many principles that distorted the facts. So in this life he also became such a person. Therefore, in the world, there are very many such cases. If we particularly love to slander in this life, claiming what exists doesn't exist, what doesn't exist exists, such people actually destroy both self and others. The great treatise on the perfection of wisdom also says, one who speaks falsely first deceives oneself, then deceives others. First deceiving oneself. This person who speaks lies actually truly deceives oneself, because no matter what a person who speaks lies cannot first deceive their own mind. They cannot speak it out. Such words would be difficult to utter. Generally speaking, those who lie definitely first deceive themselves, then use this special language to deceive others. This is what we often call self-deception and deceiving others. Deceiving oneself and also deceiving others. If someone deceives themselves and deceives others, is there anyone in the world they don't deceive? Definitely not. When we analyze lying in detail, its karmic result is also very serious. Its nature is also extremely serious. Fundamentally, it's because their mind is particularly deceitful. Only such people speak lies. Their karmic result is also extremely cruel. So here we mainly think some people may naturally prefer to speak lies. Whether lying or not, people do have some differences. For some it's a habit. I know some people, both monastics and lay people, some always insist on adding a little more or subtracting a little. This is actually very bad. When they act like this, people's trust in them disappears. When there's no trust, they themselves may eventually, in human activities, begin to diminish their own credibility. Others trust in you. Oh, this person, no matter what occasion, often speaks lies. So even very small words like this, without special hidden meaning or necessity, try to speak truthful words as much as possible. Of course, sometimes when encountering some possibly special occasions, one has no choice but to speak like this. If one speaks, it might bring about harm to sentient beings or obstacles to the Buddha Dharma. In these special circumstances, speaking skillful means or special language may be necessary. Generally speaking, whatever people say should be said truthfully and honestly, whether for oneself or others, for one's own mind. This is also a responsible attitude toward one's own mind.
Stiever Kanena, Zingen Maur Shipa Yi, Zucker Tari, Giger, Daniel Chopper Shipper and Yer.
If people speak evil words from their mouths, it's like using an axe blade to cut and hack their own body. This was also during the Buddha's time. There was a bhikkhu named called Kokalika, right? He was someone who particularly loved to slander. In the Vinaya, there are many such stories. He was an expert in slander, someone who particularly loved to speak of others' faults. Kokalika was originally in Devadatta's group. Later, he withdrew from there. After withdrawing, he lived in a forest. Later, Shariputra and Maudgalyayana, these two also lived in this quiet place. They had made a vow, it seems, every day, to liberate sentient beings from the lower realms, at least one sentient being. They continuously made efforts to liberate many beings. Among those beings who had been liberated, he was reborn in the heavenly realm. To repay their kindness from the heavenly realm, he came to this quiet forest. At this time, he may have appeared in another form among the retinue of that bhikkhu Kokalika, saying, "In your current group, there are two very remarkable noble beings. Why don't you make offerings to them? Why don't you rely on them?" And so on, thus promoting them. After this promotion, many of those followers took refuge in these two masters. Many no longer made offerings to the bhikkhu mentioned earlier. At that time, on one hand, he generated jealousy. On the other hand, he generated hatred. He constantly followed. Behind these two bhikshus, Maudgalyayana and Shariputra, trying by every means to find some faults. Later, once, the two of them went to a cave to practice in retreat. Later, because there was a woman herder, to escape the rain entered inside. When she came back, that bhikkhu Kokalika, when looking for their faults, he found that these two people had both entered the cave. Later, the woman also entered the cave, and later he also. Of course, this story differs slightly in some treatises. He found some other signs of impure conduct. Then he began slandering everywhere, saying that the two of them had broken their vows, proclaiming this everywhere. Later, Shakyamuni Buddha also advised this bhikkhu, "Don't speak like this because their conduct is very pure. They would not have such defiled behavior." But he never relented, spreading it everywhere. And even in front of the Buddha, he said, "I saw it with my own eyes. Absolutely, they have impure conduct." Later, this person, because the Buddha spoke, but he still. Later on, Kokalika's body appeared many, for instance, various kinds of disease like boils, at first like mustard seeds, then like peas getting bigger and bigger, finally like fruits, particularly large, finally like large lotus flowers. His body began to fester. Finally, he fell into hell. The Buddha spoke these 3 verses in response to this incident. I remember in the Udāna Varga it says there seemed to be 2 bhikshus. One bhiksu slandered the 2 bhikshus. Later, the Buddha advised him 3 times, but this person never agreed to change. Later, this person directly fell into the hell of tongue extraction, into that hell where tongues are pulled out. There are such cases too. In our commentary, there seems to be another story, but this one basically has the same meaning. The meaning here is, if people speak some evil words from their mouths, the main evil words, it also mentions here words that slander others, that disparage others, if such words are spoken. Actually, this is like relying on a very sharp axe or other weapon to cut one's own body piece by piece. Very frightening. Actually, this slander also compares the tongue to what? Compares it to an axe, compares it to an axe head, then using this to chop one's own body. There's no difference. So it appears that speech is very sharp, or speech seems very reasonable, but the more eloquent, the more persuasive perhaps, the more one completely destroys one's own future, constantly speaking of others' faults in this life. Finally, whether in future lives or in this life, brings very great disadvantage. For all sentient beings, misfortune comes from the mouth. The tongue is the axe that carves the body, the disaster that destroys the body. In the sutra on the Buddha's repaying kindness. It also says this, all sentient beings actually, we also often say, misfortune comes from the mouth, illness enters through the mouth. It's like this, then their tongue, their speech is equivalent to a particularly sharp axe that can chop one's own body. So many people don't pay attention and often slander others. This is very frightening. Previously, when His Holiness taught the Sutra of 100 Karmas and Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, he repeatedly taught everyone first, don't give others nicknames, for example, big nose, big eyes, short person, small person, etc., or blind person, deaf person, etc. Such behavior is very bad. Ever since His Holiness taught the Sutra of 100 Karmas, it should have been taught in 1998. After that, in our institute, basically, one couldn't hear that kind of nicknaming, giving not so good names. This exists in the world. In some monasteries, they give nicknames to each monk. This kind of thing exists, but this phenomenon is also very frightening, so it should also be stopped. The second aspect, His Holiness also said, if you see with your own eyes some impure behavior of others, this has nothing to do with you, you'd better not speak, unless it's our administrators here, the stewards, they have this responsibility. It's not acceptable for them not to speak. Others have no need to speak of others' faults. Otherwise, even if you see with your own eyes, perhaps some things are not necessarily true, so keeping one's mouth shut like a bottle is very good. We can also see here, among the great masters of the past, we won't mention in Buddhism, Shakyamuni Buddha truly had pure and stainless conduct, but he also received such serious slander, and that woman was also very bold. In a public setting, she deliberately pretended to be a pregnant woman and began to play this role. This is also very frightening when we think about it now. Then Maudgalyayana and Shariputra in Shakyamuni, Buddha's teaching, no one could match their precepts and wisdom. Such pure people, but they were also slandered by some people led by Kokalika. So throughout history, since ancient times, whether toward eminent monks and great masters, or toward other ordinary monks who have renounced, generally speaking, making many such slanders, these are all very unreasonable, including now some people deliberately, for example, splice together photos of monastics. Now anything can be done, especially in the internet age. Probably anything can be fabricated. So for some people who slander Buddhism, they may take pleasure in doing these things. This is another matter. We also have no need, but for oneself, one should properly cultivate virtuous dharmas. In this process, if one creates the sin of slandering the Dharma, the Sangha, I'm afraid whatever dharma one cultivates in this life cannot be accomplished. Even when we joke or chat casually, we should also be cautious about our careful speech and conduct. This is also very important. Because people always find it difficult to have right mindfulness and awareness. After speaking, one regrets it. Alas, I shouldn't have said these things in front of so many people. Or if you tell one person without any solid basis or evidence, it's best not to speak of faults to any other person. This is very good, because the Buddha also said, except for me, no one can know others' mental continuum. Except for me, others' mental continuum cannot be measured, so including some lay people, Buddhists now, toward monastics, toward many faults of other lay practitioners, if they spread them everywhere. Perhaps the other party actually has no faults at all, but because of your words, great negative karma is created. But perhaps the other party is harmed, perhaps not harmed. Like Shariputra and Maudgalyayana, it didn't harm them. Needless to say, the Buddha. Many in the world may not be affected. Not necessarily. If one's mind is pure, not necessarily. But what is mainly destroyed is oneself. So here we also want to mention constantly guarding one's 3 doors. Among these, guarding the mouth is very important. praising those who should be criticized, disparaging those who should be praised. The mouth accumulates many disputes. Those who engage in disputes are not happy because we should praise those who deserve praise. Those who shouldn't be praised don't need to be praised. For example, in the writings of many masters, there are specifically some categories of praise: praising the Guru, praising Manjushra Bodhisattva, praising Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. In every master's writings, these will be present. Actually, what should be praised should be praised. Those evil people who shouldn't be praised. These butchers, various evildoers, if we praise them, this is not very reasonable, unnecessary. But some people, because their minds harbor such evil intentions, their nature is very evil. If this is the case, they are covered by the disease of ignorance, which has already covered their mental eye. They don't praise what should be praised, praise what shouldn't be praised. This phenomenon is quite common. So what do they like to praise? Those who deserve to be criticized, those who deserve to be compared, what we call people who shouldn't be praised, they insist on praising. Now, some people whose practice is not very good, they often praise others whose practice is not good. Those who break precepts often praise those who break precepts. So these shouldn't be praise, but they will praise them. Then they compose treatises, or through including now WeChat and Weibo, praising people who shouldn't be praised. They disparage those who should be praised, like Shariputra and Maudgalyayana, or those with pure precepts and superior wisdom. Such people shouldn't be disparaged, but they disparage them. They are completely reversed. In this world, their three views, their values and worldview, are all completely upside down. Such people's verbal karma gives rise to various disputes. Those who often love to speak of others, they give rise to many disputes. Such disputants will not be happy in this life or future lives. Previously, on the small island, there was someone called Liao. Some may know he seems to have died in 2018. Sometimes his literary foundation was still quite good. Everything, he had a good memory too. He also liked reading and studying, but in front of him everything had to be slandered and disparaged. He began cursing this one, cursing that one. Except for a group of people he didn't curse. These people he particularly praised. Except for this, the whole world, including various universities, various political figures, various eminent monks and great masters, he particularly loved to speak of all their faults. Later, when he died, I heard it was quite miserable. Actually, this person was for a period of time still quite famous. In comparison, now some of our Tibetan teachers often speak of this one, speak of that one, but their level in all aspects seems insufficient. Compared to him, they just constantly invite various troubles for themselves. They themselves say some things today, then tomorrow, when these people attack, they get angry again, suffer again, and have to start clarifying. Then after 2 days, they say something again, but their theories, their learned knowledge in all aspects, their cultural level are not that great. Only a few students below students basically listen to their teacher. These students are also gone. They're not affected by anything. Such people in this life also deliberately invite many troubles for themselves. They themselves are not happy either. You can often see it. Others say, I have nothing wrong. But actually it's not like that. From their tone, from their attitude, much can be seen. Last year there was another person, he probably can't do it recently anymore. He was also a so-called social commentator. He often spoke of this and that. But later, it seems, when he went to Shanxi, when he went out to those places, he had a little incident. Of course, his incident also had various reasons from the other side and various operations behind the scenes. So later, originally he wanted to comment on everything, comment everywhere, various comments on all kinds of things in society. But later, it didn't work out either. Actually, people who love to speak of others' faults at a certain point will bring real disaster upon themselves. They create much from their own mouths. If one really wanted to speak, then indeed in our Tibetan Buddhism, like the omniscient Garampa of the Sakya school, the omniscient Longchen Rabjam of the Nyingma school, including other schools, there are also those with exceptionally superior wisdom. True debate is debate based on reasoning and logic. One should have very sharp wisdom, convincing people through reason, not cursing people with harsh words. Such people, what we often call cyber violence now. Regarding cyber violence, much of it, originally it was misfortune comes from the mouth. Now it's not necessarily spoken from the mouth, it's all typed in text. Then cursing this one online, cursing that one. Especially now, many celebrities, many are cursed by others. After being cursed, they really can't bear it and commit suicide because their ability to withstand pressure is also relatively poor. For Mahayana practitioners, when others criticize them, they may transform it into the path, and the wisdom in their mind stream grows even stronger. Not only does it not harm them, but it may actually make them more renowned and improve their practice even further. However, many famous people in the world may not be like this. When people start attacking them, last year there was a celebrity who dyed her hair red. Then people kept criticizing her online and she couldn't bear it any longer, so she took her own life. Indeed, when a person's mind is very fragile, even small matters cannot be transformed into the path, and they choose to end their lives. Such phenomena are quite common, but all of this actually stems from our various forms of speech, not praising what should be praised and praising what shouldn't be praised. This gives rise to all kinds of disputes and slander, ultimately leading to unhappiness in both this life and the next. Therefore, Mipham Rinpoche also said we should praise all the great masters and learned ones and condemn those who are base and ignoble. In truth, the great masters and wise ones who deserve praise are indeed worthy of our praise, and those who deserve condemnation, those who should be criticized, people in this world who cause serious harm to society as a whole, society and the people should look down upon them. But in today's society, sometimes right and wrong are reversed, black and white are inverted. Many who deserve praise don't receive it, but instead receive all kinds of slander. Meanwhile, those who deserve criticism or whose influence should be diminished instead receive all sorts of praise and fame. This is also a sign of the degenerate age we live in. This is actually a normal phenomenon, so we shouldn't be too shocked by it. Sometimes seeing the truth of this society is very important. Otherwise, you'll keep asking, why is this society so unfair? Why do they treat me this way? You'll constantly complain and blame heaven and others. In fact, there's really no great need for this. The phenomena in our society don't necessarily mean that people with merit and capability receive everyone's respect and praise. Rather, in this world, as the Sakya proverbs illustrate, if you go to a certain place and see a person without a tail, everyone treats them as something extremely rare. This is quite similar. Therefore, in this world, we should discern right from wrong, distinguish merit from fault. This is extremely important.
Gandar chulo ranur pamshe ba tap chur den jungz zamde zat gangji dever xigla yitg ba den der tap chur shinde chimbu yin.
Gambling ruins one's wealth, but the dispute itself is minor. Disturbing the minds of noble ones through dispute is an extremely grave fault. It seems our commentary may not include this story, but in the Chuyao Jing, Udāna Varga, it says there was a monk who went out to beg for alms and he saw some people gambling. While gambling, some people won and some people began to lose. Later they started arguing, fighting and quarreling. Later, it seems this matter was reported to the Buddha, and the Buddha gave them some analogies. For example, are the water drops in the ocean large or not? Is a speck of dust from Mount Sumeru large or not? When he asked these questions, they all said that one drop of water in the ocean is not large, and one speck of dust from Mount Sumeru is also not large. Then the Buddha said that their disputes are actually, in our reality, not very significant disputes. Such words are not very frightening. What is most frightening? It's when they slander noble ones, slander the Tathagata. That is what's truly frightening, although their words are false and deceitful, without real substance. For those who slander noble ones in this way, even if 100 million Buddhas appeared, there would be no way to save these beings. Then the Buddha spoke these verses. So in our worldly life, everyone thinks that when someone gambles and loses so much money, tens of thousands or thousands of yuan, when calculating during the dispute whether it's this wealth or this fault, it's not considered very great, although for the person himself it may mean bankruptcy and losing a lot of money. It should be considered a big matter. But overall, this loss is not particularly significant because this kind of loss only harms your wealth in this lifetime. As for wealth throughout countless lifetimes, it won't be harmed at all. It won't be. On the other hand, if someone disturbs or slanders the mind of a noble one, in Tibetan it's desha. I think the commentary refers to noble ones, right? This desha, the noble one, can also be understood as the mind of a faultless noble one. If you disturb it, if you slander it, then the fault of such dispute is extremely great. This is called a grave sin, particularly terrifying. It's very difficult to purify throughout countless lifetimes, especially as stated in the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines. Many other negative karmas can be easily purified through confession, but when it comes to slandering one's spiritual master, even with antidotes, there's no way to completely purify it through confession. One must experience the consequences oneself. In the Treasury of Word and Meaning, scriptural citations are also quoted saying the same thing. Especially disturbing the mind of one's Vajra master, the fault is extremely grave. In our 50 verses of Guru devotion, there is related meaning as well. So this is what's most frightening. As for other things, like losing some money in this world, these are not particularly serious. That should be the meaning.
Ngayat Pagbe Mapper Dukten Na, Shiver Chiver Jandang Tomchak No, Jup Chig the Chiver Dorwa Yi, Semchin Yarwa Namson Rover and Yer.
Next it says, if one commits verbal and mental negative karma reproved by noble ones, beings will fall into the Arbuddha hell for 100,000 kalpas and into the Nirarbuddha hell for 41 kalpas. This is mainly explained in the commentary using a vessel from Magadha filled with sesame seeds, where one seed is removed every 100 years. Usually in the words of my perfect teacher and some guidance texts, this example is taught mainly regarding the 8 cold hells, where the lifespans are also extremely terrifying. This is mainly used for analysis. From the Arbuddha hell and the Nirarbuddha hell continuing on, the 8 cold hells are taught. They are taught sequentially. So here, if someone, like the monk Kokalika mentioned earlier, commits extremely grave negative karma that is reproved by noble ones, reproved by the Buddha, or reproved by noble ones, engaging in speech that slanders others, and also generating malice and anger in their mind, such karma, the fruition is extremely terrifying. Even in this life they will suffer short life, powerless speech, and various illnesses, and whatever they wish for won't succeed, and so on. There are all kinds of sufferings. Then in future lives they will fall into, especially this karma of slandering noble ones, they will fall into the cold hells. The commentary explains it's not only the cold hells, but actually they can also be reborn in the hot hells and other hells. The time of this rebirth, such beings will, for 100,000 kalpas, first in the hell realm, in the first cold hell, the Arbuddha hell, they will experience suffering in the Arbuddha hell. Then for 41 kalpas they will fall into the Nirarbuddha hell and experience suffering there. So if we don't guard our speech truly, in this life one may be a free and independent person, but in future lives, for so many kalpas, for so many years, continuously in the cold hells or hot hells, unable to be liberated, this is truly terrifying. Therefore, those who love themselves should always guard their speech, whether it's intentional slander or baseless slander. Actually, there's no need for this at all. Many of us may aspire to be reborn in the Pure Land, but for rebirth in the Pure Land, slandering the Dharma or the Sangha is a major obstacle. Therefore, we should always guard our 3 doors. Among the 3 doors, speech is the most important. If we don't guard our speech, it can create many faults. This is truly terrifying. Next it says,
Dugba semgi mani shtyonjo pa dagni dag satshir anyarwar perwar zadar tubdan ni pa dagnab zoshe jang tela sem jang chikbar mafshe do.
With evil intent and without reason slandering, killing oneself, falling into hell, the wise one can patiently endure and their mind remains undisturbed. This verse mainly refers to two monks named Sundar and Maudgalyayana's disciples, and another monk named Gopaka. We've discussed this before. There was some past life enmity between them. Later, these two monks, the two I just mentioned, slandered the monk Gopaka, saying he had impure conduct with the nun Utpalavana, this kind of slander. Because of this, the Buddha later spoke this verse. The meaning is, if with evil intent, with jealousy, with anger, with past life resentment, or with ignorance and delusion, the scope of evil intent is quite broad. Because of evil intent, one begins to slander without reason. Regarding baseless slander, we have slander with cause and slander without cause. Slander with cause has some clues or basis for the slander. Slander without cause has no reason at all. Intentionally, without any basis, you go and slander. Just now, those two slandering the monk Gopaka, actually there was no basis, at least in this lifetime, but they still went and slandered him. Such slander is actually a form of self-destruction. If in this life you use untrue words to speak about others, this is killing yourself. Then in future lives, when this cause and fruition ripens, you fall into the hell realms and experience immeasurable suffering. Therefore, as a wise person, one is able to forbear, including others' slander. When they have unpleasant experiences, they can completely digest it themselves and won't start slandering others because of it. The wise have the ability to discern. The foolish lack the ability to discern. They simply follow the crowd. Indeed, in today's world, people who truly have the ability to discern are not very numerous. Even some people who have studied various kinds of knowledge, learning, and credentials, very impressive people, when they encounter real situations, they're not very good at discerning. Therefore, the wise person, because they have their own ability to discern, their mind will not be shaken. For example, let's say beside you, someone is speaking ill of a bodhisattva or a realized being. At such times, a foolish person will simply echo those words and begin spreading these unfounded and improper statements. They may keep spreading them further and further, but a wise person will observe carefully and form their own conclusion, and only then will they speak. Before that, they do not believe easily. So some of us, including those who read various rumors online, should know that people with discernment generally do not believe such things easily. They may think, surely there is another side to this. In fact, nowadays, whether it's online or in the news, many people remain skeptical because we've seen too much that is untrue. So in this world, all kinds of words may be spread, but with time, people's true nature is revealed. When we observe carefully over time, the true facts will eventually emerge. A wise person can bear such things completely, while someone without wisdom will have their mind shaken very quickly. So it's worth reflecting on this. I recall there was an old sutra called the Sutra on slandering the Buddha. I remember seeing it some years ago, translated by Bodhiruchi. Yes, Bodhiruchi. He was quite a famous translator in Chinese Buddhism. If you have the opportunity, you could read it sometime. It describes, for example, 10 bodhisattvas who practiced for 7 years or so, but did not attain realization. Later, due to certain actions of the Buddha, there was some slander against the Buddha and Dharma teachers, and these obstacles were present. Through certain practices and mantras, these obstacles could be purified. That is the gist of the sutra. It was originally translated by Bodhiruchi, and later there was another translation. The Buddha Speaks the Sutra of Definitive Dharan also has a translation. The meaning is essentially the same. There are many meaningful teachings in these texts. For instance, it says that to slander a Dharma teacher is to slander the Tathagata. There are many profound principles in these teachings. So in our daily lives, it's not enough to simply listen to others' words. We must examine things for ourselves. In the past, our Guru Rinpoche taught us the sutra that inspires noble intentions.
tenne pakpa na Drapchum chujin soa tang tambar pomver shepa to Nigmam Richard Taver na Runga Rang Rangam Drever Sut.
A few years ago, I also taught this sutra. After the teaching, many of us felt we must never slander again. At that time, His Holiness also taught it. One transmission was the reading transmission, and one was the actual teaching. I think I taught both of these. But now, not to mention the content, I've even forgotten the names. One was called the Sutra that inspires noble intentions. The foolish, clinging to wrong views, abandon the Dharma for their livelihood. They slander noble arhats and the Buddhist teachings. Like the bamboo bearing fruit, they destroy themselves in the process. There is a story about a certain bhikshu who was once a non-Buddhist practitioner. Later, when the Buddha taught him the Dharma, he kept slandering and criticizing 3 times. The Buddha said this should not be done. Slandering the Dharma leads to rebirth in the hell realms, where one suffers for 80 billion years. But the person still refused to listen and eventually had to experience the consequences. In response, the Buddha gave this verse: "The foolish, clinging to wrong views, abandon the Dharma for their livelihood. Those who do not understand right view, the foolish rely on wrong views. Not knowing what to accept or reject, those who are ignorant rely on wrong views." What kind of wrong views? Perhaps they hold on to views of self-identity, the belief in a self or possessions within their own mind stream, or they are misled by non-Buddhist teachers or wrong views. Such wrong views arise in their mind stream, or they are simply extremely ignorant, unable to discern right from wrong. For these reasons, when wrong views take root within, what do they abandon? They abandon the Dharma as their source of sustenance. According to the commentary, Dharma livelihood refers to the Buddha himself, because those who have attained the path rely solely on the Dharma for sustenance. They do not depend on worldly food or things. So those with wrong views will slander the Buddha who has realized the ultimate path, or abandon or slander the Buddha and the noble arhats, or all noble ones who have attained the path. If we speak separately, noble ones are those who have seen the truth, such as stream enterers and above, and arhats who have cut off all samsaric existence in the 3 realms. Thus, they slander the Buddha, the noble arhats, and the Dharma. In this way, they slander all 3 jewels. They slander the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. What is the result for such people? It is like the bamboo bearing fruit. When the bamboo produces fruit, it actually begins to die. The fruit itself, though it may seem like a fruit, marks the decline of the bamboo. When a bamboo flowers, even the pandas have nothing left to eat, and they may die of starvation. So in plants, there are certain parallels. There is also this analogy below. When a person gains fame or wealth, they may destroy themselves, just like the bamboo when it bears fruit. This will be explained further later on. If someone really stands up and slanders the 3 jewels, they will experience decline, both in this life and in future lives. Of course, in today's society, outside of Buddhist communities, there are some people who arrogantly disparage and belittle Buddhism, and they may gain certain temporary benefits in their lives. They might receive some advantages, especially in certain periods. In our region, too, some people did this just to enhance their social status, fame, or wealth, and would frequently disparage the 3 jewels in public gatherings. They would say things like, there is no hell, there is no heaven, and so on. But later in life, they deeply regretted their actions. This is a very common phenomenon. So what does this teach us? It teaches us that in this world, some people may be misled by wrong views and follow misguided teachers. For example, Devadatta also taught 10 or 5 improper practices, such as milk shouldn't be drunk, otherwise it is bad for calves, or meat shouldn't be eaten as it harms sentient beings. Also, you shouldn't live in solitary places, otherwise you won't have opportunities to benefit others, and so on. He advocated various improper behaviors, though in fact some of what he said was not completely unreasonable. So in some points did make sense. Yet the Buddha always taught the middle way. Devadatta at the time was only trying to show off his asceticism, so he acted like an extreme ascetic, separating himself from everything. This was his approach. In fact, even nowadays, some people also support these views for certain reasons. But in reality, Buddhism does not fall into extremes, but teaches the middle way. When teaching the middle way, there is an underlying truth and practicality. So here, I want to say, if you rely on wrong views to destroy or slander the three jewels, that is truly frightening. In the Samyukta Agama Sutra, it is also said that if one's mind is bound by greed, anger, or ignorance, and this bondage ties up the heart, one is harmed inwardly and at the same time brings about destruction outwardly. It is like the bamboo that bears fruit. This analogy is used to illustrate the point. So, I think that in our lifetime it is truly not easy to practice virtue. When we have such opportunities, we should often pray that wrong views and negative thoughts do not arise in our mind stream. I believe that many people present here, and most of those attending in person, would not give rise to such wrong views. They simply would not appear unless somehow one lost their mind, or if circumstances became like those in the 1950s or 60s, such things might occur. It's hard to say what would happen in those times. Guru Rinpoche once said, "The times do not change, but people's hearts do." So when people's hearts change, it's hard to predict. A few years ago, in some places near us, certain things occurred, and people's attitudes changed quickly. At that time, it seemed many people supported negative ideas and took the side of negative influences. This does happen, but I think for those of us here, there probably won't be any major problems. Mostly for people who live in cities, if they don't have good spiritual friends around them, if they don't have the ability to guide themselves, or a stable view, and if there's no one nearby to help, it is very easy to be influenced by others. At first one may have a good view, but over time they can be led astray, and eventually their view and practice are affected. Someone who was once a good practitioner, a good monastic, may slowly change over time. If, after changing, they no longer do much, that's not too bad. But for some, their minds may become disturbed, and they may do unwholesome things. There are many such cases. Now, on the internet, many people talk about negative things and live stream such topics, or give online talks focused on these subjects. These people have a very negative influence and suffer greatly themselves. They may even influence society, but even more sadly, they harm themselves. Some people, using the opportunities of the new era, start their own live streams. And I've even seen some Buddhists who use skillful worldly language and gradually seem to be speaking about health, well-being and medicine, or social ethics, or even charity work. But in fact, they are gradually influencing people's minds. I think this is actually very necessary. For example, producing Buddhist-themed cartoons or other Buddhist media, such as films or short films that guide people toward goodness or other similar projects. There are also some people who do a good job at this, but after a few days their project fades away. It just disappears on its own, because in our world it's not easy to do something long-term. There are not many people with unwavering determination to do something truly beneficial. In the process, one will certainly encounter all kinds of obstacles, all kinds of hindrances. This is a universal truth, there's no doubt about it. As long as you do anything meaningful, there may be even more obstacles and adversity, but you should not be afraid and always act reasonably and lawfully, never violating the rules. There are many worldly rules and spiritual rules as well. As long as you act appropriately and within the rules, even if you only plant a single seed of virtue in someone's mind stream, just as it is described in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, the merit is truly inconceivable. This is truly necessary. So many people now study Mahayana Buddhism and should strive to do something meaningful now. You should do your best to contribute. Otherwise, some people always wait until I'll do it when I'm mature or when I have the ability. But by then, who knows if the conditions will be right? It's hard to say. So, first and foremost, examine your own mind, whether it is tainted or selfish. If you are only seeking fame or wealth, just as the great Kadampa, masters of the past, said, if that's the case, then don't do it. If you are acting only for your own reputation and self-interest, but if your motivation is truly sincere to benefit sentient beings and spread the Dharma, then using modern skillful means to do things is also worthwhile. So now, in many places, there are voluntary and self-motivated groups mainly thinking of benefiting sentient beings. That is what truly matters, not things like, I am this master's disciple, I am that master's student, or competing between different masters or between different schools. I think this is unnecessary. Our Buddhist community is already quite small, so such competition is not needed. What's even more important is that many beings are in need of the medicine of the Dharma for their hearts so that they can find true happiness. We have so many wonderful Buddhist teachings to offer in this regard. Each of us can cultivate bodhicitta according to our own situation and do something meaningful. All right, we'll finish here for today.
Bandara